Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, host of the Riderflex podcast and founder and CEO of our day job recruiting firm, Riderflex. We hope you enjoy this episode. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the podcast for updates and news. Finally, if you haven't already, check out the series of books we've published on hiring, interviewing, and overall career advice titled The Riderflex Guide, available on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Most homeowners don't have the time or expertise to properly take care of their home, which causes costly issues to arise. That's where Cura Home Maintenance comes in. We're a full-service, routine maintenance company that was developed by a certified home inspector. Each quarter, we service our clients' homes following manufacturer's recommendations to properly maintain all the necessary appliances. We provide the materials and expertise to prolong the life of your property, creating a healthy and efficient environment for your family. From top to bottom, we'll maintain and service your home. To get started, we have a property inspection to determine what needs to be maintained, and a maintenance plan is created based on your preferences. From refrigerator coils to filters, vents, and drains, we do it all, and we do it well. Contact us today for your free routine maintenance inspection, and never worry about your maintenance again.
I just wanted to point out that I did get the Riderflex branding memo in my wardrobe today, so you're welcome.
I like it. Maura Barclay on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Maura?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got the colors on. By the way, great mic, great lighting. I mean, just thank you. It looks awesome. So many times guests come on and they don't have it all put together. You do, so it looks good.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I've had some really awesome guests that I'm so excited to talk to, and they've got a lot of juice in their industry. And then they come on with AirPods, and the sound is so bad. And I'm like, oh, do you have a? They said no. I'm like, all right, we're gonna roll with it. But you know how that is. You're just like you take what you can get.
Yeah, I roll. I'm the same. I do roll with it, but it is nice to have somebody that's all set up. Very, very good. So for the listeners, before we get into, everything people in HR and recruiting and all the different things you do, before we get into business, let's talk about more of the person. I want to know what's going on. What's going on behind the curtain? Let's talk about the family first. Mom, dad, siblings, where you grew up. Kind of start early if you don't mind.
I don't mind at all. I'm from Michigan. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's the only state that looks like a mitten. And I will share a little secret handshake with people. This is very special, rare knowledge I'm about to share with you and your guests. So just don't spread the word. When you meet someone from Michigan, you will know if they're actually from Michigan, because they will hold up their right hand or the back of their left hand and show you on the hand where they are from, because it's exactly the same shape. I used this on, I was going into my apartment building yesterday, and the person in front of me had a Michigan license plate. And when we got into the elevator, I just held up my hand and pointed right in the middle. He goes, oh, how'd you know I was from Michigan? I loved it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I did not know that. Interesting fact. Okay, yeah. Wow, that's pretty cool. Oh, so from the middle, where is that? So where are you from?
So this is East Lansing, Michigan. It's the home of MSU. That's where my father, trained clinical psychologist, was a tenured professor of psychology at Michigan State University, Go Spartans, for 38 years.
Wow.
And so I lived in Michigan, and I have an older brother who he actually went to school at Cranbrook, which is a super cool, amazing school in Michigan that's in the suburbs of Detroit. And then he went on to Maine and wound up going to work in China. He kind of pioneered China back in the late 80s when no Americans were there. So he's got an interesting story as well. And his podcast is called Unbounded Life. Now he lives in Chiang Mai, and he's just he's amazing what he's done. So he and I are in very different places, different spaces, but we help each other a lot to this day. Nice. Yeah. And so I wound up going to school at University of Colorado Boulder, and I stayed there and worked as a firefighter for a while. And,
oh, really? Well, how did you pick CU?
Originally, I wanted to get into international relations because I have a language facility, and I thought maybe I'd want to be a translator because languages are really easy for me to pick up, and
Oh,
accents are easy for me. My brother has it as well. There's some sort of mimicry thing we have in our. We're like mocking jays. We hear it and we can spit it out. I don't know.
how about that?
So I thought, well, maybe I should be a translator, and there was a handful of schools, American University, let's see, there was a Middlebury in Vermont, and University of Colorado at the time had quite a robust international relations program. So
Okay.
that was back when we were doing SAT scores, ACT scores, and something about me is I'm a terrible tester.
Oh,
Terrible,
ooh. Yeah, but
terrible.
you got into CU though. So you must
I did, but like, I would say this: standardized tests are not an accurate measure of intelligence at all.
agreed. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Before I was about to start asking you about CU and the firefighter stuff, but I want to back up just for a second. How about your mom, real quick? Your mom,
Oh
what?
yeah. So my mom, she actually is retired, and she lives in Thailand with my brother because, well, not with my brother, but it's there, she has
Yeah.
her own independent living situation. Thailand has become quite the retirement destination for people and medical destination for people.
I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah.
very good. So your brother's in Thailand too. They're.
Yes.
I see. She moved out there to be close to him.
Yeah, she wanted to be, and granddaughter. So
I see.
she,
That
right.
makes
So
sense.
yeah, so
Mhm.
he married a wonderful Thai national. In fact, these are the names of my nieces on my forearm here, written in her handwriting, with a
Really?
Sharpie.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool. That's
the
pretty cool.
Sharpie marker. I do Muay Thai kickboxing, and so our ready position is here. So I wanted the tie on my forearms, uh, as you do. So yeah, I get to go see them, and I have this amazing place to stay and family in Thailand,
Nice.
and it's amazing.
That's
Yeah.
pretty. That's pretty awesome. And dad is still in Michigan, retired. What's he doing? Chilling.
Yeah,
What?
so he's with my stepmother of God knows that they've been married forever. So they actually go to Florida when the weather in the Midwest gets
Mhm.
untenable, which
Yeah.
starts around November. And
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
when the weather in sunny Florida gets a little bit too hot for Midwesterners, he pops up north, and they live on this beautiful lake. And lake life is the best. I'm a big
That's
fan. I
nice.
would like to, yes, I say lake life rules. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Now, so they got divorced when you were little. Were you still in school? Were you? Yeah. How old were you when they
Yeah,
got
so I
divorced?
was about 2.5 years old. So,
Oh, okay. Okay.
oh yeah,
All right.
my brother
Yeah.
and I were very young. So we were children of the '60s. We grew up in the '80s as latchkey kids. We have all the feral children stuff, you know.
Okay. Now, all right. You're giving your age away, but
Yeah.
you don't look. You look much younger than you were. Are you telling me you were born in the '60s? No way.
Yes, I was.
No. Can't be.
Yeah. Just I'd get my driver's license out, but well, here's the thing: there's no sun in the Midwest, folks. So there's no premature sun damage. There's just we had. I'll give you this. I remember when I think it was my junior year in high school. The sun was out for for the winter solstice. I'm not talking about like, oh, the winter. No, the winter solstice. We had a cumulative 9 hours of sun in the entire winter solstice. There's just, you know,
Well, I'm just telling you right now. I had no idea. I just assumed you were. I was really. I'm gonna have to enlarge. I got. All right. I got my screen. Let me just enlarge my screen. I mean, I'm looking at you right now, thinking you're in your late 30s.
That's very kind of you. Well, I do have a couple of tricks up my sleeve. And for anybody who does podcasts, I will give you this. I have a standing desk that is cranked up to about 10 feet in the air. So I've got this awesome angle on my computer. And if you knew like the lumens on the light in front of my face, it is as bright as the sun. So with a couple of little tricks of the trade, I have taken, this is how I put it. When you have people take pictures of you with your phone, I say for every decade above 20, you go up about 2 inches. I'm not kidding, folks. It makes a huge difference.
It's
Yeah.
so true. Yeah. I'm always telling my wife that too. Sometimes she's on video. The video, it's looking
No,
up and I'm like, Kim,
don't
no.
do that. No, you got to get up. And it's also, it will, for every decade and every 10 pounds, because it will take 10 pounds off you every inch you go up.
That
So
is
naturally,
so
I've got the
good.
straight arm. I'm up here.
That's pretty good, Maura. Pretty cool. Okay. And so were you, a great kid, good kid, rebel, straight A student, library every day? I don't know. Were you calling dad from the sheriff's office? I mean, what kind of teenager were you?
So I had a very, I would call it tumultuous childhood. My stepmother has she's a very high functioning, I forget what the actual, there's a particular, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to like put a wrong diagnosis out there, but she and her family struggle with a particular mental affliction that is like, she worked and she was really good at her job, but she did have this struggle and she would medicate with alcohol. So she was a bit of an alcoholic. And I say a bit of an alcoholic because she could go to work and she's not drinking at work. She was working during the 80s and absolutely slaying, but then she would come home and it was a bit of a dumpster fire. So my father being a psychologist, I think he needed to have someone to help in order for him to, be in his identity. So he found this woman who needed a lot of help. And when she would drink, she turned into a bully. So my response to that was to become very compliant. Like I didn't break a rule. You don't have to yell at me. Because in my mind as a teenager, I was very, very sensitive. I'm a bit of an empath, which helps me in my job, by the way. It really helps me if you know how to be an empath in HR, it's very helpful, but you got to know how to be an empath. And we can talk about that. So I developed this empath skills because I had to suss out when I got home from school, is it safe?
I see.
And a lot of people who had difficult childhoods, which by the way, is most of us, but I mean, nobody's talking about it. When you have a parent who's not safe, the second you walk in, your spidey senses turn on and you figure out, who do I have to be? How do I have to be? How do I get through this evening unscathed?
Yes.
And
so dad was the primary. So you lived with dad?
I lived with dad and stepmom.
Right. Okay. And then you saw your mom like on weekends or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I was living with my mom till I was about middle school. And then I went to high school in a very, very small town in Michigan. I wanted a change of scenery. So yeah, I moved from East Lansing to a little place called Saugatuck, which is right on Lake Michigan. It's really lovely.
I know where that is. Quick question. When your when your stepmom started getting a little wild there, did you call your mom and be like, hey, I want to come back and live with you? Or was that not an option at the time?
No, I left for a reason. My mother has about 12 Olympic gold medals and learned helplessness and victim stories. And I'm like, I could see this is not someone who would be able to give me the discipline that I needed. So I went, thought, I'll hang out with my other set of parents, which was just a whole different set of difficulties that at the time seemed like a better deal. I did not have a really safe place to be. And my response to that was to become a warrior. #firefighter, title winning bodybuilder. I'm going to keep myself safe since my parents can't be trusted. That happens to a lot of people, and a lot of women actually wind up doing it.
Okay.
Yeah, we wind up going that way. Yeah.
All right. So were you athletic in high school and college?
Yeah. Not in college because there wasn't anything for me to do. Sadly, I was a competitive gymnast from the time I was 8 years old. So I started gymnastics when I was 6. Became a competitive gymnast and I went to the Junior Olympics a couple times.
Cool.
This is what, back in the day, obviously we didn't have power floors back then. We like tumbled on like mats. Like there were no double backs because we did not have springs in our floors. So everything was different. We didn't do giants on the bars. We did this thing called a beat because the bars were wood. There was fiberglass was a new thing. So this was like before all of the very OG gymnastics, like before all of the innovations. So the innovations led to more deeper, more exciting skills because everything was augmented. So I did that. And then when I went to college, I wanted to do gymnastics, but CU didn't have a gymnastics team. So I thought about being a cheerleader because that's where I could like stunt and tumble, but it was not my cup of tea. Those were not my people, like no judgment, but they were really excited about who's going to get on television and looking super like glamorous. And I'm not, I'm just like an athlete. I'm kind of a very practical tomboy. And I was just not into it. So But I
Okay.
did.
Now
I got to tumble with them, and I got to help them learn. I'd help the men learn how to tumble because of my
okay.
background.
Okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned bodybuilding, right? Is that what you
Yes.
said? Did you? What's called? Give me that. Give me the story there.
So for gymnastics, I did have to learn how to condition, and weightlifting was part of later in the game. Actually, it was when I forgot to mention this. So I quit gymnastics when I was in 5th grade. And then I restarted as a sophomore in high school after I had gone through puberty, which
Interesting.
was interesting because I had not grown that much. Oh my gosh, I'm so wee. I'm like 5'2". I'm like fun size. You put me in your pocket. But I do weigh a lot. I'm built like a Clydesdale. It's all quadriceps and shoulders, and it's a nightmare. I can't find clothes to fit me. I have to buy like boys' clothes, which does not help. I'm a heterosexual woman, and I'm buying boys' clothes. I'm built like a what house. Anyway, it's a whole thing. I don't get a lot of representation in the media, you can imagine. Anyway, so yeah, I went back and did gymnastics again as a sophomore in high school. And we did have weightlifting as part of our conditioning. And I was kind of into it. And then when I went to CU Boulder, there was nothing for me to do. So I started lifting weights, and oh my gosh, my genetics, I just look at like completely naturally on dorm food. Eating dorm food, I won my first bodybuilding title. And so that was a lot of science.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
You have to send me. So I mean, we're talking bodybuilding, just like you're doing the poses and you're going to the competition. Wow. Pretty cool. Wow. All right. You're going to have to send me some old photos. We should put up some photos on the podcast.
I could. I do. I think I have a couple of photos I can send you.
Are you still active with training at this stage in your life, or no?
Kind of, although I have to say, part of my spiritual practice is going to Zumba. And the reason I say that is because I worked in the fitness world at the highest end of fitness for very, very many years at Equinox. It is the top of the line, very expensive. I worked in management. I worked as a director at headquarters. I actually commuted between Seattle and New York for a couple, for a little while. So I've worked at the top. I have worked with the most talented instructors in the world, and going to LA Fitness in West Seattle, Zumba, where some of the instructors don't hear the rhythm the same way I do. So they're teaching just slightly off. And I'm just like, this is awesome. And they are wonderful people. And it helps me get out of my mind and into the moment and just appreciate the fact that I'm moving my body. And then after that, I go into the weight room and throw down.
Really? Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you look like you're still in pretty great, awesome shape now.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Very. And how about your diet? Like, are you pretty strict? Or you kind of, what are you, average, or you watch what you eat now? I'm just curious. And I'm asking that question for my own self too, because damn, I'm 56 and I just, it's,
things happen, right? As soon as you pass that 50 mark, you're like, what happened to this body? Yes. All right. So again, this is spiritual practice started to evolve sort of, it got in a strange way, kind of a life of its own. And I woke up one morning and I realized that I just didn't need to be a person who ate meat so much, which was difficult because I was kind of a strict paleo person for about a decade.
All right.
So to go from that to just, and I'm like, carbs, I'm like, you can't, I'm like, legumes, really? I need to eat legumes? I don't know. So it was, I was a big shift in changing my body chemistry and also, menopause is a thing that men don't have to deal with. And so you can just imagine you wake up one morning, like, here's 5 extra pounds that you didn't have yesterday. And it's like, what happened? So there is a whole piece of there's a whole letting go of control of the body, especially for a woman, because,
are you vegetarian now? Are you vegetarian?
Yeah.
Really?
I mean, I will eat occasionally like some scallops. Like I'm a bit of a pescatarian and I am from the Midwest. So I don't know that I will ever retire my eating of cheese because I have a moral obligation.
No steak, no cheeseburgers or steak. No, those are out.
No meat, nothing with the mom, really.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
As
All
Mr.
right. All right.
Rogers says. Yeah.
And are you careful with your carbs, or you do eat some carbs, but you're careful, or how does that work?
Well, I'm very careful to make sure I'm covering all of my nutritional bases. So I have a plant-based protein powder that I use in my diet, but I
all right.
eat like a total peasant. I eat once or twice a day. I don't pay part of my practice is I like to when my body gives me the impulse that it's hungry, I watch it and I'm like, all right, thanks for letting me know. I'm not going to eat now. It's
like
part of learning. It's part of learning how to not my body is my ally and my servant. I am not my body works for me. And
very
so when,
good.
when I get the really base instincts, other than breathing, which I'm really into, and my body can tell me when to do that, but everything else, I push pause and I say, all right, yeah, I heard you. We don't need to do that right now.
Very
Right now,
good.
it's like my body's like a 3-year-old kid in a way. Yeah.
Tell me about the fireman thing. You said did I hear you say that you worked as a firefighter?
I did. Yes.
Okay, now was that right after school, during school? Where was that in your timeline there?
So I graduated college with a degree in advertising and a minor in marketing and Spanish. And this was during the great, not great migration. What was it called? It was during like the big cutting of people. There was like this massive purge, an exodus. There we go. There's a big corporate exodus. It was like when corporations really, it was late 80s, early 90s. And this is when corporations are like, hey, we don't need to give people their retirements anymore. We can just fire them. That started to happen. That's when it started to happen. So all of these professionals with experience were thrown into a very saturated job market. And this is the story I'm telling anyway. I was, right out of college and, finding a job in advertising at that time was more challenging than I had anticipated. And certainly CU Boulder had not prepared any of us for this exodus, this corporate exodus this culture shift that had occurred. Okay. And I really wanted a career. And, I grew up in a very chaotic environment. And so being in chaos and kind of organizing it felt really organic and good to me. So I also like emergency services because it is black and white. It is fire and water. It is, I'm having a medical emergency. I'm here to help. There is no gray area. It's like, and I really appreciated having, growing up in an environment where I'm like, is it what's happening? And is it safe? Just to have some really clear boundaries on life. I was like, it felt like a relief. Okay. So, and I had already been doing the bodybuilding. I was strong as an ox, and I actually went and joined a volunteer fire department first to make sure that I could handle the work because I'm so small. Okay. So I made sure first that I could do it. I also worked on an ambulance. I loved emergency medicine. Loved it. In some ways, I liked the emergency medicine better than the firefighting, but that's mainly because I didn't get to do as much of it. The fires didn't happen while I was working. We always had this saying, we don't want anything to catch fire, but if it has to, please let it happen on my shift while I'm working. Right? So, because we all want to practice. You don't want a fire department that only gets one fire every 5 years, because that is not good. It's probably not going to go well.
Yeah, I mean, that would get boring. That would be boring. Why did you get out of that work?
It was a couple of things. Number one was I realized very quickly that I was not a great culture fit, even though I liked the idea. I liked the work, but there was so much downtime. And I was at a phase of life where I was just into proving how smart I was. And I really wanted the men to respect me. And I thought the way to do that was through my smarts, which was the opposite of things. Their nickname for me was Webster. I just did not know how to read the room. I was like, I'm going to be the one, I'm going to be the lady that they like. I'm going to be the one who never complains, who just shows up and does her job. And like, I'll be the cool one. And that was a mistake. That was a huge mistake. Eventually I wound up quitting because I was harassed by one of the most problematic lieutenants. And, one of the problems with this is one of the downsides of unions. because I was very much pro-union. I was a union negotiator for a few years even.
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes unions have a tendency to surround a cancerous employee and protect them.
Yeah, I could see
That's
that.
problem.
By the way, do you mind me asking, was this sexual
Yep.
harassment or just harassment
Yep.
in general?
No, it was first sexual harassment. He touched me inappropriately in front of people, and it was
I
like,
got
and he
you.
slapped me on the ass, and in front of
What?
in
What?
front of slapped me on the ass in front of 3 crews, and we were all just mortified, like nobody knew what to do. We were all
Wow.
just paralyzed
Wow.
by his
Wow.
impropriety, and I'm like, really,
Wow. Bro.
really.
I would be like, dude, what are you doing?
And it was so mishandled by HR. The city HR basically told me, I mean, I had an opportunity to involve the EEOC and the ACLU,
I'm sure.
but
Yeah, I'm sure.
it wasn't my thing. But
Was
they
that
basically
the trigger? Was that the sorry to interrupt. Was that
No,
the
sorry.
trigger? Was that the trigger point for you into HR? Was that
Nope. Nope.
I was just wondering.
Not
Oh,
even
okay. I
close.
didn't. Oh, okay. Okay. I thought maybe that was like oh, this is now my, I didn't know. If that
No,
was,
it's quite, it's kind of funny, and it's kind of maybe even ironic that I wound up in HR. So because HR has always been someone that I've like partnered with in different jobs, but I've
Yeah.
never been in HR. I've worked in some HR functions, but anyway, so the end of that story is, I had other relationships with other firefighters that were like my brothers, and we would
Okay.
wrestle around and we would like hit each other because we respected, understood, and appreciated each other. Like it was a healthy relationship, and all kinds of men had similar different relationships with one another. But because I had allowed another man to touch me, HR told me that it was, I should anticipate that men won't know what's appropriate, and that it would have been smart. I should basically not have any relationships where any men get to touch me because it sends the wrong message. I'm like,
wow.
are you sure can you repeat that? Like, did you really just say that to me?
Yeah,
Are you
wow.
kidding me?
Wow.
So when I was like, I could lawyer up right now and make it, but I'm like, it's not me. It's just not my style.
Man,
We worked it out.
I am
Yeah.
so careful. I've been leading people for over 30 years, and I have always just been very careful about any touching of a female. I mean, I'm a hugger, so
Right. Me too.
throughout my career, hey, how you doing, Sally? Give them hugs and stuff. But man, even that, like, I'm even those I'm super careful and super short with. Like I never wanted that to ever be, even sometimes, like if I tap them on the shoulder or I kind of give them a pat on the arm, sometimes after I do that, I'll be like, oh man, I better be careful with that.
And I catch myself because touch is my love language, man. If I appreciate you, and I'm a hugger, I'm a big time hugger. So usually I lead with my hand, and I'm like, are you a handshake or a hug type person, to give them an out? Because I don't presume. And then like we took a picture. At Emrgy, we took a picture with my arm around. I was really excited. We were doing an on the spot award, and I was in Atlanta, and the EA had just done a bang up job with this on-site. So I said, like, I want to feature her. And so we did a picture, and I put my arm around her without asking. And I'm like, oh my gosh, was that okay? Like, I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I'm also so careful. I don't, I forget. And also it's part of our generation. It really is.
It
part
is.
Of our
Yeah.
generation.
Oh, no doubt. Yep. I totally agree. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and but here's the thing, the guys I had the relationships with, we would literally wrestle, like, because I have an older brother. I'm used to it. They would never, ever do what that guy did. They know what's appropriate. That's the thing that's so funny. It's like, listen, there is a way that men and women can work together and be collegial and even be familial.
Yes.
And you just need to make sure that it's okay. And it's funny because the men who are respectful will never, ever have a problem with touching. They really won't, because they're aware. It's the men that are using touching as a means of domination. Yeah, they're the ones that are going to have the problem. This is not it's like, if you're using power in that way to show, and you are not aware that you're using it that way, that's when you run into trouble. You can have all kinds of closed door meetings with women. Just don't be an ass.
Yeah.
It's
By the way,
so
I was also careful about those. I was also very careful about the door being shut, and I don't know. I was always super careful. How did you? Okay, so you go from that, and then you started working in the fitness industry, basically, I guess, for a lack of a better term. And then you did that for a while before HR. Is that accurate? Is that?
Yeah, I had a very weird career path. I did all kinds of things. Once I was working as a group fitness manager for Equinox, and actually, no, before that, yeah, let's just start there. So I worked as a group fitness manager, and my work style is, it's called the Maverick and the PI system. And I'm extremely entrepreneurial. And I was always looking for ways. I can't help myself, looking for new verticals, looking for new ways to take what we're doing and make it bigger, make more money, or involve more people, just create. I can't, that's who I am. And in that role, I felt so much pressure to not do anything that I was built to do. And a lot of it I loved, but a lot of it was very difficult for me. It felt very constraining. And so when I could get out of it, I loved all the mentoring. I loved all of the conflict management. I had hiring, recruiting, training, identifying, new talent. I loved all of that. I even loved the admin. I loved doing payroll. It was so zen. I'm like, give me a spreadsheet, I'm ready. So I loved those pieces of it, but the creativity part was not there for me. And every time I tried to do it, it was crickets. I could not get anyone to send me back an email about the stuff that I was trying to do. And I actually successfully launched an initiative that created an entirely new revenue center. But they just didn't care. They're like,
they didn't care. All right.
They didn't care. They didn't care. I'm like, oh my gosh. If I can't get your interest with money, I'm out. Like, I don't even know what to do with this anymore. So, anyhow, I left that and I became a consultant, and I had created an intuitive empowerment system for women called Unbreakable Woman. I wrote a book called Compassionate Self-Defense and Empowerment. And it is about self-advocacy. It is about how you carry yourself. It's not just safety on the street, although that was what I started with, because I figured that was the smartest way to open up a market for myself, is start with personal safety, because women never feel safe. Is
the book available on Amazon right now? Unbreakable Woman, Compassionate Self-Defense and Empowerment. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
So I thought, personal safety, that's the way to go. So it's an advanced situational awareness manual, and it also translates into how women carry themselves in leadership. So I got on the radar of some Fortune 500 and Fortune 100 companies, and I got invited to do keynotes and lunch and learns and trainings.
Cool. Awesome.
So cool. And then on the strength of my book, I got networked into a military contract organization.
Nice.
They invited me in to do, because curriculum development was something I love to do, developing workshops, unique, tailored curriculum to achieve a particular result. Creativity, it's right up my alley. I love it, especially if it can be monetized.
And now you're in your lane. Now you're fully in your lane, and things that you're like, okay, you're enjoying it. You're passionate about it. Okay. Awesome. All right.
So it's going into organizations and seeing where there were gaps and giving them tools and skills and strategies and tactics in order to drop that little training, and then, hopefully they would take it and run. And with the military, I actually got to develop original curriculum for their harassment and assault prevention initiatives that they did. And I got to fly all around with this teaching cohort, all male, all veteran teaching cohort. I was the only female and the only civilian. It was awesome. They treated me extremely well. I really enjoyed it. And so that was my consulting. It started there. And then I branched out and started to audit handbooks and onboarding policies, because the millennials were starting to come into the workforce, and our generation did not know what to do with these kids. They did not know how to handle it when someone's like, I don't care what your title is. I need a minute of your time. And Gen Xers are like, what are you talking about, kid? Go sit down and be grateful, right? That's what our generation says. Sit down and be grateful. We will let you know when you can say something, and it shouldn't be challenging at all, right? Welcome to Gen X leadership.
So good. Yeah.
And so I got brought in to help manage expectations for millennials. And that's what really started me on the path of understanding culture and employee experience, and where companies need to start the process so that they don't have issues once the ponies left the barn. Once you get them hired, That's the pony leaving the barn. And it's very difficult to walk that pony back. You want to handle everything before that happens, but they weren't seeing that. So I started to get into strategy.
Okay.
That's how I got where I am now. And I was working I've been a consultant and a solopreneur on and off for like 15 years.
I see that on your LinkedIn profile. Yeah, I see that on your LinkedIn profile. So that's moving along great. You're making a living doing that as a consultant and working with various companies. It's all going good. You wrote the book. Let me guess. Emrgy originally got you on as a consultant, and then they talked you into going full time, right?
Actually, it's kind of the other way around.
Oh.
It's kind of the other way around and I would say I talked them into it because I felt I saw a need that they didn't know they wanted yet.
Okay, but they brought you in as a consultant first.
Correct, for predictive index and culture. Yes.
I see. And then you were like, hey, I like you guys. You like me, and then you worked at it, and now you're, for lack of a better word, an employee there. Are you still doing some consulting and book stuff and podcast stuff on the side, or Emrgy's, you're all in at Emrgy and that takes up all your time?
I only do my podcast. I don't have time for anything. I don't even have time for the podcast, but I'm doing it because I think it's important. Okay. So I'm all in with them.
Okay.
What's
the name of the podcast? What's the name of the podcast for everybody?
The podcast is called C Change, and that's the letter C dash change, like C suite.
Okay. C
Change, changing business culture for good.
Okay, on Spotify and everywhere else. I mean, everywhere.
Apple, it's on all the platforms. And the whole idea of it is the following. I recognized when doing my women's empowerment work that men are the solution here. Any equity issues we have, white, heterosexual, cisgender men, middle-aged, most likely. You are the answer. You are the answer. So instead of having all this diversity, equity, and inclusion in women and blah, 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 like it's all important. I don't mean to diminish it. So please don't misinterpret my blah, blah, blah. All of this effort can move the needle about 1/4 of an inch, or one white man in power inside the system can make one small choice and move it a mile.
Ooh, I haven't heard it said that way. I see what you mean.
An ounce of white male CEO commitment is worth a pound of HR policy.
Wow.
White men are the solution. They can work the system from the inside. It is the system designed by them for them. Inside the machine, it takes very little effort to make a tweak. This is where the answers are. Right here. Now, I am not in a position to tell white men anything. I'm just not going to do that. They don't want to hear it from me because I don't understand their world. I don't know what it's like to grow up in that culture. But white men who did grow up in that culture have made the shift, have successfully brought in women and people of color, and are absolutely killing it in their businesses because they have diverse decision-making teams. They can help their brothers make that choice. So I interview those guys.
Gotcha. Do you think I'm going to say we, because I'm a 56-year-old white male. So my group, my club.
Yes.
Have we gotten better? Have we gotten better in general? Are we improving or are we not?
Are you looking for kudos right now? Is this
not
necessarily. Totally teasing you. Totally teasing you.
No, I'm just curious as to somebody like yourself, an HR diversity expert. When you look at us, my club, I guess I'll keep saying that. Are we improving or are we not?
Here's what I would say. There are a handful of absolutely exceptional middle-aged white guys. Dave Smith and Brad Johnson. You couldn't get more white middle-aged men than these guys. They co-wrote a book called Athena Rising. They wrote another book called The Good Guys, and it is all about how and why you should mentor women and how to mentor women. How to do it effectively and why it's so important. And it's not just women, it's women of color, it's Black men, it's people of color, it's people who are differently abled, it's people who are, LGBTQIA plus. You can apply what they say. They have awakened. I would say the number of white men who have awakened into the unsustainability of the culture you've all been indoctrinated into. And I use the word indoctrination very, very intentionally, because if one of you steps out of line, the machine might unravel. So the male policing is intense, and I'm sure you can speak to that. I've researched about male policing. It's rough. There's a reason that men don't. Yeah. Male
What's the
policing?
definition? Yeah, what's the definition of that?
Male policing is a means by which men hold each other in check to not step out of line in the culture, into the bro culture. It's a way they maintain compliance of the bro culture.
Do you think this is such fast, by the way, we could do a whole episode just on this topic.
Just on this stuff. We could do a
whole episode. Yeah. Do you think it's unconscious decisions and actions by my club because we were just kind of raised that way and brought up in that culture? Or is there malicious, bad intent decisions more often than not? What do you think?
It's such a huge question, and I love that question, and I would love to unpack it the whole, like, in another episode too. That's the story. But here's the thing, though, Steve. No, please don't apologize. These are such important questions to ask. Number one, you have to I'm going to answer your question in a couple of different ways, and I think it'll make complete sense once I land the plane here. Okay. When I say gender issues, who pops into your head?
You mean what group?
Yes. We've got to talk about gender issues. Who's popping into your head? Who's coming to that meeting? Who's leading?
Who's leading the meeting?
Yeah, no. Who comes into your mind as needing
the group? I guess group? The LGBTQ community, maybe.
Okay, so gender is LGBTQ. Okay, now if we have culture issues, we need to talk about. We need to talk about cultural awareness. Who's popping into your head when we talk about cultural awareness?
Minorities.
Aha. Are white men not part of a culture?
Right. Yeah. They
are white men not part of a gender?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Don't you find it interesting how invisible? Do you feel the invisibility?
Totally.
Because it's that invisibility that has kept white men out of the conversation. It's that invisibility that your tribe is trying to protect.
Interesting.
Because with the invisibility comes lack of accountability. And whenever you are brought into the light through, for example, Me Too, how many men who were not ready to look at that went scurrying back into the shadows and be like, I'm going to make sure I'm never alone with a woman.
Well, yeah, no, that definitely scared me. I know my actions. I'm like, oh shit. I don't ever want to be in a closed room with a woman because I don't want to be accused of something. I know that affected me.
That's a false narrative, by the way. That does not happen. That you bought into the false narrative. It's not your fault. That's part of the male policing. Don't do it. They're going to get you. They're going to ruin your career like they did this terrible abusive man. You're not that guy, but do you see how you fell for it?
Yeah. Oh, totally. The invisibility is an interesting word. I judged myself by using the word. What did I use? Unconsciously doing something that I didn't realize. I'll try to make this short, and then I want to ask you a couple more questions before we run out of time. When I put together the advisory board for Riderflex, our recruiting firm, I wanted an advisory board. We weren't an official. We didn't need a board of directors, so to speak, but I did want an advisory board to have to help our reputation and things and branding when we first got started. And I just wanted mentors around me that were going to offer good advice. So what did I do? I made a list of friends, former bosses, people that were in my circle, right? And I got the list together, and next thing you know, I had 7 advisory board members. Guess what they all look like?
Like you. They looked exactly like you.
They look exactly like me.
Of course.
And I never, like, it seriously, like, never even crossed my mind. Like, I never even thought about it, really. And then what happened was a friend of mine, Joe, but she's female, J-O. She calls me one day and she goes, hey, I was just looking at your webpage. She was a CFO for me back in another life before I started Riderflex. She goes, hey, I was looking at your webpage. She goes, you know, all your advisory board members are middle-aged white guys, right?
Go, Joe.
I was like,
Joe.
I was like, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, I didn't really think about it. And so just then she's like, yeah, you need some women and minorities on there. I'm like, yeah, you're right, I do. And then she goes,
Yeah.
by the way, you've now we've interviewed over 400 people on the podcast, but back then I think I was up to around 100 or so, right? She goes,
Yeah.
by the way, like 85 out of your 100 guests or white males on the podcast. I was like, fuck, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah,
Yep.
not good.
Here's
But
the thing
my
though.
point is like, but I wanted to defend myself by saying, well, I wasn't
Right.
like consciously doing that. You know, I
No.
wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to interview that person because they're African American or whatever. Like I never thought that way. But because I wasn't thinking about it ahead of time, I made those decisions that put me down that path, if that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lack of awareness because
Yeah.
your club has never been asked to be aware of such
Aware.
things.
Yeah. Right.
And it's new for you. Also, your club has not been dealt any training for the cognitive dissonance that befalls you when
There's a
you
good term.
realize,
Good,
holy
that's good description.
shit,
Holy shit. Yeah.
holy shit, I have been participating. Now, the thing that
Yeah.
I want to bring into this conversation and the whole reason for my podcast is the following. For people like you who have been under the veil, right?
Yeah.
You've had blinders on because
Yeah.
that's how you were raised.
Yeah.
You are unconscious of this. It is critical that we do not treat people like you with this shame and blame business. Like we have
Yes,
to pull
that-
shame and blame
I think that's
out of this.
important. I'm glad you
out of
brought
this-
that up.
Yes, please. Like, and I tell people this, like, you come on my podcast, if you're a Black woman or if you're a woman, listen, I get to say this because I've been through it.
Yeah.
There's no shame. There's no blame. There is no judgment. There is no man bashing allowed. And I say that's like the first page of my book. P.S. Half the people, there's only a handful of people who have reviewed my little book. Half of them are men.
Yeah.
5 stars. Half of them are men.
I'm glad you said that because I do agree. Like I have come across, sure, in my career, I have come across people that are racist. I have come across men that treat women unfairly, but I will tell you that is rare. Like, I mean, I've seen it, but it's rare. It's rare. Most men are like me, like they're just kind of moving along in their day, and then they wake up and go, oh, I got 80% of my podcast is white. Oh shit, I didn't know. Like most of people I know are like that. I don't know a lot of malicious bad people that are just really making conscious decisions to be racist. So I'm glad you said, because sometimes the media, sometimes quite frankly, the media, I wake up and I just like feel guilty because I'm a 56-year-old white guy and I'm like, what did I do? I don't feel like I didn't do anything.
Okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. Like I don't think we need to go all the way to the other side. That's not necessary. And I maintain this, and this is part of the research that I did for the women's empowerment work. 10% of the population is causing 90% of the problem.
Yeah,
and we're so focused on the 10% that is fucking it up for all the other awesome men or men who are just harmless, but they've just not been trained to be aware. Like, it's people like you that need to be treated with kindness and welcomed to the conversation. Like white men, we need you. We are not going to exclude you from the conversation. We want you there. It's not going to be all Black women and gay people and people in wheelchairs. We need you. We want you. We promise we will not treat you the way you've treated us.
That's good stuff, Maura. That's good stuff. That is good. That is good stuff. Let me do this. I'm going to just pause just for a second. Hold on.
Sure.
Maura, one more question on the diversity. By the way, fascinating conversation. I'm gonna have you back on the show because we could go so much deeper and longer.
I love it.
And maybe we could just do a whole show on that. But as a recruiting firm, because our day job is recruiting firm, right? The podcast is a marketing tool for us, but our day job is recruiting. We will get clients sometimes that will say to us, I want a Black female, or I want an Asian female, or I want a young person under 40 or whatever, right? They're giving us specifics. And we will usually say, well, okay, hold on. First of all, we don't discriminate against any groups. We're not going to break any laws. We're not going to, our job is to present the best candidate. If you have a diversity goal, that's great. We'll try to be sure we recruit from all the right places to give you a good mix of candidates.
Right.
But if I interview Fred, who's 48-year-old white male, and he's great for the position, I'm not going to exclude him from the list I give you. That's how I've been responding. Should we be responding any differently? How should we respond to that when a client pushes us that way?
Well, I think it's important. When somebody says, send me a Black woman, what I hear is we're getting all the same candidates. We just want to see somebody different. We want to see more representation in the candidate pool. That's what I hear. Because when listen, I work in energy. You want to find an industry that is more white male dominated, finance, rail, there's a handful. Water and energy are old and they go way back, and it is very much entrenched in white male culture. And so when I want to hire someone, I want to look at a diverse pool, because I want different points of view. I mean, it's one thing I want to be clear here. Got to hire skill, right? Education, I'm not worried about. Skills are first and foremost. And then I want different points of view. So I want to have a diverse pool. So I wouldn't call out a particular gender or ethnicity or ability, right? Or sexual orientation. Like, to me, prescriptive hiring is very dicey. You want to break the law, you want to get in trouble. That's the pathway right there.
Yeah.
Right? You want to break the law,
Totally.
prescriptive hiring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. So go ahead.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. I want to follow that up with one more thing. I get a lot of phone calls from former executives looking for work or looking for help or asking for my advice on things. I get more calls from white men between the age of 50 and 60, out of work, used to be an executive, whatever. And they're telling me I can't get interviewed. Like, they won't interview me because of my age. I feel like I'm being discriminated against because I'm the white older male guy. And, because of the consciousness now around being diversified, they feel like they can't. They feel like they're being discriminated against now. Is that true? Do you think that's true? And what would you tell those guys if they called you, what would you say?
Well, one, I don't think I can speak to the truth of it without having a white paper in front of me. I haven't seen enough research to really speak to that in an educated way. And I wouldn't want to, want to talk out of school about that. But I would say there is most likely far more of these men in the job market than there has ever been. So suddenly there may be a flood of these types of candidates. And it's not that they can't get a job. It's just that they're already represented in so many interviews and they are not used to it. So they, of course, feel like they're getting discriminated against. And unfortunately, welcome to the world when now that we have the need to bring different voices in, there's only this many spots available for people of your experience and skill level. And you represent a particular point of view that is already represented in this group. And we need to look at other points of view. And there's a lot of you with your point of view in the job market right now.
I
see.
Yeah.
Do you feel the difference there?
Yeah, for sure. The ageism thing too, boy.
Yeah, you and I both, we can talk about it. We can talk about it.
Our clients all the time, like, they're too old or they're too senior. It's like, I had an old mentor of mine tell me one time, he called me, he'd gotten laid off. He was an old boss of mine and he'd gotten laid off. I think he was around 55 or so at the time. This was a long time ago, but I'll never forget what he said. He goes, Steve, here's the deal. After you're 55, nobody gives a shit.
That's interesting.
It does kind of feel that way sometimes for candidates, right? Like, once they're over 55, like, oh boy, whether we want to believe it or not, hiring managers discriminate against age. They do. Period. Not all the time, but they do, even if they don't want to admit it. I see it constantly as a recruiting firm.
Yeah,
Uh,
there is, and this is the thing I can't figure out. Like, people are complaining bitterly about Gen Z and millennials. And
Right.
yet I'm like, listen, you want some grit? Hire a Gen Xer. Why
Yes.
are you messing around with it? Like, are you kidding me? Let me tell you, my company, Emrgy, was not shy about putting a 5:30 a.m. meeting on my schedule because they're on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast. I'm a Gen Xer. You know what I said? I'll be there, camera on, let's go. We don't think about that. We just show up and we work.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
That's right.
That's how
Yeah.
we were trained to be. So
Yes.
it's fascinating to me. They're like, they're giving grit books to other generations. I'm like, just hire people who have grit.
Great
Why
point.
is this so
That's
difficult?
Good advice. Yeah. Isn't that so true? You nailed it. You nailed it. They complain because the millennials don't want to work 80 hours a week or whatever. They don't think they have the same work ethic, but yet they won't hire the Gen X. That's such a good point. That's such a good point.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can keep
We can
going
talk
down
about that. That's a whole nother episode.
That's a whole nother episode. I want to ask you real quick here before we run out of time. Last topic for this show. By the way, let me just, Maura Barclay is on LinkedIn. You can connect with her there. And if you look her up, in case there's a million Maura Barclays, she works for Emrgy, and just so everybody knows, EMRGY, Emrgy. And she is the director of people and culture, right? Is that right?
That's
Is that what
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Director of people and culture. So if you find more than one Maura Barclay, yeah, just look for the one that works for Emrgy. And you want to tell us real quick, tell us about
Yeah.
Emrgy. Give us a quick overview. And then I want to ask you this last question about hiring. Go ahead. Tell
Sure.
us. Yep.
So Emrgy is doing something really unique. Emily Morris, who I interviewed on my podcast, because white lady has a whole, as a CEO, has a whole nother set of challenges regarding diversity and inclusion. There's a lot of interesting conversations around that. So I had to have her on my show. That's how I met her.
Yeah.
She has pioneered something that has never been done before. So we're doing something completely unique and we're first to market. When you think of hydroelectric, typically people think of dams. And what she's figured out how to do is tap into the thousands, if not millions, of agriculture and industrial canals that have water moving through them 24/7, 365, all around the world. This water is millions of megawatts just flowing. And
Yep.
she has figured out how to put in modular hydrokinetic turbines, drop them in and start generating clean, cheap power.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I mean, it's a great idea. By the way, it's Emrgy, EMRGY. One more time, Emrgy.com if you want to learn more there. Emily, I also had Emily Morris on the Riderflex podcast too, so they can listen to her interview there with me. And tell the audience what the name of your podcast is one more time. C-Change. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I don't understand why these aren't everywhere. When Emily came on my podcast, I'm like, well, I just kind of looked at it like, well, this is like a no-brainer. Like, why wouldn't you do this? I don't understand why these aren't just everywhere right now. Like, what is the holdup?
Yeah.
She mentioned that the municipalities and different the owners of the land and the waterways, she's like, it just moves so slow because you're talking about government agencies and different people
right.
involved, and it's like,
So
oh God,
much.
it's like pulling teeth. You're like, oof.
Yeah, the regulatory bodies around water, and as I mentioned, rail, one of the only other areas of ownership is water, irrigation districts, water rights. That's as old as rail. And also the Bureau of Reclamation, there's the board, the renewable energy. What's the other one? There's also tribal lands and working with
all kinds of, man.
I mean, it goes on and on and on. It is quite a morass of red tape that needs to be navigated. And there is a tremendous amount of technology that is also involved in computer modeling to make sure the hydraulics work and what's the capacity and the economic opportunity and yada, yada, yada. It goes on. And once you pull that thread, it is a long one. So there's definitely, again, we're first to market. There's nothing in place to deal with this. There are no beelines. We have to we are walking through the forest with a machete, and it is dense. It is dense.
It's a very cool, very, very cool idea. Great company. Love what you guys are doing. So I'm wishing you guys the best of luck as you move along. Okay, I want to ask you one more thing here. I know we're over on time. I'm sure you're up to date on the AI and the tech advancements and ChatGPT. And I mean, hell, I don't know, there's like a new app or software every week. I'm like, somebody's sending me something. I'm like, okay, now I got to learn another one.
Yeah.
And I think, I kind of want to get your opinion on this. I feel like, because, for example, software engineer job postings are down like 60% compared to last year. All of a sudden, the guys that used to be in the highest demand are all of a sudden looking for jobs. I think that's hilarious, by the way, because software engineers were so cocky for so long in the recruiting world. Do you foresee white collar laptop jobs in some cases? Are they in danger long term here? And all of a sudden the blue collar trade skill jobs these are the most valued. What do you see? I'm curious to get your thoughts on it.
Well, I think this is kind of like television and movies. When the television came out in the 50s, the movie theaters were in a panic. Oh my God, movies are going to go away because now people can watch in their living rooms. But did that happen?
No.
I mean, if you think about specialty skills, and there's things that only humans can do that I don't care what anybody says. There is no intuitive wisdom in computers. They will never have it. They will never have the human touch. They will never have common sense. They will only have aggregated data. They are not smart.
Yeah.
It is not artificial intelligence. It's artificial organization. It's artificial computing.
Ooh, I like that. Thank you. The lack of
So
EQ, right? I guess they don't have the EQ piece for sure.
No, they never will. And that's not their job. They're here to optimize. They're here to optimize. And I think they're going to do an amazing job of it. And I think what would be wise for people, and this is why I love being in the human business, is I feel very safe in my work, because computers will never have the ability to help people work it out, to be able to get a vibe, and recognize, that is what ultimately is most valuable about us. So and manufacturing, like Emrgy, we're manufacturing brand new things. We're machining things that have never been done before. We can put things into computers, but we don't even know what we need yet. They're here to help us. I think AI, generative AI, it is here to help us, to optimize us in ways that we just haven't had before. So yeah, there's going to be some work that is going to be obsolete, or will maybe need to become more sophisticated or more humanized. And that is where you want to look, right? Look at, okay, what's coming down the pike? What can I do that generative AI cannot do? Like my ex-husband is a writer, and he's not worried about his job because he's able to capture people's stories in a way that AI will never be able to, because he's listening to the essence of the people, right? That's different.
I'm sure you've talked to your ex-husband about ChatGPT and all that. Then he's not worried about that. He doesn't. He's not. No,
not at all, because he's able to. For example, when someone needs a tagline. So here's the little thing I want to just throw in here, and I know we only got like a minute left. Words have a frequency. They have a vibration. They have a resonance. And people who are skilled at choosing words are capable of taking the resonance of the intention that people are looking for, such as in a tagline, and plugging in the correct words that resonate, that are getting them, just do it. There's a resonance in that. Do you see?
Yes.
This is what AI will never be able to capture.
I love that. Boy, that's great explanation. Great overview. Maura, I know you got to go. I'm gonna have to come back to either to your show, or I'm gonna have to have you back on, because we got so much to talk about. Great interview. Thank you so much for sharing. Appreciate your story. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Steve.